From the dusty streets of Lagos to the glittering mansions of Ikoyi, Amaka's journey is a breathtaking tale of hope, betrayal, and love that bridges two worlds. When a billionaire CEO offers her a chance to change her life, she must navigate office politics, scandal, and her own fears, but ultimately, she discovers that true strength lies in walking side by side. Witness an unforgettable African folktale of courage, trust, and a love that changes not just one life, but an entire community. The streets of Lagos were alive with the chaos of morning traffic. Yellow danfos honking, hawkers weaving between cars, the scent of roasted corn mixing with exhaust fumes. Amaka sat on the pavement near a busy junction in Victoria Island, her headscarf faded, her hands clutching a rusty tin cup. She had been there since dawn, eyes downcast, listening to the coins clink as strangers dropped small change into her cup. Life had stripped her of many things, but never her quiet dignity. A sudden hush fell over her little corner as a black bulletproof SUV rolled to a stop. The glass tinted so dark it mirrored the city. When it lowered, she saw him, tall, chiseled, wearing a crisp navy suit that looked like it belonged on a runway in Paris. His eyes lingered on her longer than they should have. There was no pity in them, only curiosity. He reached for his wallet, but instead of coins, he handed her a neatly folded note and a small white card. "Come to this address," he said, his voice deep and steady. The light changed, and the convoy rolled away, leaving Amaka staring at the card like it was a key to another world. Amaka turned the card over in her hands. It was heavy, the kind of card that whispered of wealth. Gold lettering spelled, Chike Obi, CEO, Obi Holdings. Below it, a polished address in Ikoyi gleamed. She had seen the estate once years ago, from a Danfo window. It was another planet compared to the one she lived in. Her first instinct was suspicion. People like him didn't notice people like her, unless they wanted something in return. But hunger gnawed at her resolve. Her little sister, Chioma, was sick back at the shack they shared in Makoko. Medicine cost money, and Amaka had none. By the time the sun began to dip, Lagos had transformed into a city of lights. She walked to a nearby kiosk, bought a sachet of water, and tucked the card into her dress. She told herself she would think about it tomorrow. But as she lay on the thin mat beside Chioma that night, the words "come to this address" echoed in her mind like a promise, or a trap. The next morning, Amaka's feet carried her toward Ikoyi despite her doubts. The roads grew quieter, the buildings taller. Palms lined the streets like guards of honor. Every car that passed was worth more than her lifetime earnings. When she reached the address, a wrought iron gate rose before her, guarded by men in sharp uniforms. One of them eyed her from head to toe, his gaze sharp with disbelief. "Who are you here to see?" "Chike Obi," she said, holding out the card like a shield. The guard made a call, then, to her shock, the gate swung open. She was led through gardens so perfect they looked painted. The mansion itself gleamed like a palace, its white walls and glass windows catching the morning sun. Inside, the cool scent of lemon polish filled the air. She was ushered into a vast sitting room where he stood, hands in pockets, watching her as if he'd been expecting her all his life. "You came," Chike said simply, and the way he smiled made the ground under her feet feel less certain. They sat opposite each other, the air between them taut with curiosity. Chike's presence was magnetic, but his questions were surprisingly gentle. He asked about her life, her family, and listened without interruption. When she finished, he leaned forward. "I want to help you," he said. "Not with coins on the street, but with real opportunities. Work for me." Amaka blinked. "Work? Doing what?" "Anything you're willing to learn. I own companies, properties. I can put you in a position to earn and grow." Her mind raced. Offers like this didn't come without strings. "Why me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. His eyes softened. "Because you looked me in the eye. Most people look away. I like people who are not afraid. It was tempting, but fear held her back. I'll think about it, she said, rising. He didn't stop her from leaving, only said, My offer stands. Don't take too long. Back in Makoko, news of her visit to Ikoyi spread fast. Neighbors whispered as she passed, some with envy, others with suspicion. Chioma coughed weakly, her small body shaking. Who was he, Amaka? She asked. A man, Amaka said, tucking the blanket around her sister. A man who says he wants to help us. Do you believe him? I don't know. That night, the sound of water lapping against the wooden stilts of their home mixed with her thoughts. Lagos was a city where people wore masks. She had seen men pretend to give with one hand while stealing with the other. But she had also seen something in Chike's eyes, not pity, not lust, but possibility. And for the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a life where she wasn't invisible. 2 days later, Amaka stood by the busy junction again, but the coins in her tin seemed lighter than usual. Chioma's fever had worsened overnight, and the herbal concoctions from the local vendor weren't working. By midday, she found herself boarding a danfo heading back toward Ikoyi. She told herself it wasn't about Chike, it was about survival. The danfo sped past Third Mainland Bridge, the water beneath glistening in the sunlight like molten glass. When she arrived at the mansion, the guard seemed to already expect her. Chike was in the garden, speaking into a phone. He smiled when he saw her, as if no time had passed. I'm ready, she said before she could change her mind. He ended the call and nodded. Good. You start tomorrow. Amaka's first day was overwhelming. The Obi Holdings headquarters in Victoria Island was a towering glass building, the kind that made you feel small before you even stepped inside. The reception desk gleamed, and the staff moved briskly, their clothes crisp and expensive. Chike introduced her to Adiz, his executive assistant, a sharp-eyed woman with perfect makeup and a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Adiz was tasked with training Amaka in administrative duties, from filing documents to answering calls. By lunchtime, Amaka's head was spinning. She had never touched a computer before, but she was determined to learn. Chike checked on her once, offering quiet encouragement. Back home that evening, Chioma's eyes lit up when Amaka handed her a small bag of groceries. You look different, Chioma said softly. Happier. Over the next week, Chike found reasons to pass by her desk more often than necessary. Sometimes he asked about her work, other times about her day. His questions were never invasive, but his gaze lingered, warm and curious. One rainy afternoon, the office generator failed for a moment, plunging the room into near darkness. Amaka startled, and Chike, passing by, touched her shoulder. It's okay, he murmured. The simple gesture sent a shiver through her. That night, as she lay beside Chioma, she found herself replaying that touch over and over. She told herself it was nothing, just kindness. But her heart beat faster at the thought of him. Not everyone was pleased with Amaka's sudden rise. Adiz, in particular, began to drop subtle remarks in meetings. It's not often the boss brings in someone with no qualifications, she said once, her tone sugar-coated but sharp. Amaka ignored her, focusing on her tasks. Still, the whispers in the office grew. Some called her the billionaire's pet. Others speculated about what she must have done to catch his attention. One evening, as she was leaving, she spotted a familiar face near the building's entrance. Kola, a man from her old street in Makoko. He smirked. So, you've moved up in life. Careful, Amaka. Men like him don't save girls like us for free. His words followed her all the way home. A week later, Chike appeared at her desk just as she was shutting down the computer. Dinner, he said simply. She blinked. Sir, come to dinner with me tonight. No business talk. Just two people sharing a meal. Every instinct told her it was dangerous, but she nodded. An hour later, she found herself in a quiet, candlelit restaurant in Lekki, the kind where the waiters moved like shadows and the plates looked like works of art. Chike spoke little about himself, instead drawing stories from her, about Chioma, about growing up in the floating slums, about the day she almost drowned as a child. When the evening ended, he walked her to the door and simply said, "I'd like to do this again." She smiled, but in her chest, her heart was already doing things she wasn't ready to name. 2 more dinners followed in the weeks ahead, each one peeling back layers between them. Chike began to share pieces of his life, his late father's empire, the pressure of being a public figure, the loneliness that came with wealth. One night, over a bottle of fine red wine, he said, "People see the suit, the car, the money. They never see the man who sometimes wishes he could vanish." Amaka met his gaze. "And yet you noticed me, sitting on a pavement." He smiled faintly. "Maybe I was looking for something real." Outside the restaurant that night, a photographer's camera flashed. Chike didn't notice, but Amaka did, and a knot of unease settled in her stomach. 2 days later, a gossip blog headline screamed, "Billionaire Chike Obi seen with mystery woman, not from high society." The photo showed her beside him, stepping into his SUV. At work, the stares were sharper. Adi's smile was colder. Chike seemed unbothered, but Amaka felt exposed, like the city itself was watching her. That evening, in Makoko, neighbors teased her openly. Some cheered her on, others whispered warnings. Chioma asked quietly, "Are you with him now?" Amaka hesitated. "He's different." Chioma's eyes narrowed knowingly. "Be careful, sister." Chike invited her to a charity gala at Eco Hotel, insisting she come as his guest. He sent a stylist to her home, and by evening, Amaka barely recognized herself in the mirror, the elegant gown, the soft waves in her hair, the subtle shimmer on her skin. When she arrived on Chike's arm, conversations in the grand ballroom paused. Cameras clicked. She felt both powerful and painfully out of place. Chike introduced her to politicians, foreign investors, and celebrities. Some greeted her warmly, others with thinly veiled disdain. Midway through the night, a wealthy socialite leaned close and whispered, "Enjoy the spotlight while it lasts, darling. Men like him always return to their own kind." The words stung more than she expected. After the gala, they drove along the quiet Marina Road, the city lights flickering on the water. "You were perfect tonight," Chike said. "I felt like I was wearing someone else's life," she admitted. He reached over, taking her hand. "You belong anywhere you want to belong, Amaka. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." His touch lingered, warm and grounding. In that moment, she realized she was no longer just grateful to him, she was falling for him. It happened on a Thursday night. They had stayed late at the office, going over documents. The city outside was quiet under the weight of an approaching storm. Chike stood beside her, close enough that she could feel his breath. "Amaka," he said softly. She turned, and his lips were on hers. The kiss was slow, deliberate, carrying none of the rush she had expected. When it ended, she was breathless, her heart pounding. But reality crept in as he stepped back. "This changes things," he said quietly. "Yes," she replied, though she wasn't sure if it was for better or worse. In the weeks that followed, their relationship became a quiet rhythm of stolen moments. A lingering glance during meetings. Shared coffee breaks on the balcony overlooking Victoria Island. Late-night phone calls that stretched until dawn. Chike was careful, always keeping their closeness away from the public eye. Amaka understood why, but part of her wondered if he was protecting her, or protecting himself from the scandal their love might cause. At home, Chioma noticed the changes. "You smile more these days," she teased. But there was worry in her voice, too. "Don't lose yourself in him." Amaka promised she wouldn't, though a part of her feared it was already happening. One Friday evening, Chike took her to a secluded beach in Lekki. They walked barefoot on the cool sand, the ocean breeze lifting her hair. Out of nowhere, he began speaking about his childhood, about his mother's sudden death, his father's strict expectations, the pressure to take over the empire before he was ready. "I've never told anyone these things," he said. "Why me?" she asked. "Because you listen without wanting something in return," he replied. "Do you know how rare that is in my world?" She didn't answer. She only reached for his hand, and he let her hold it until the stars began to fade. The next week, Adiz called Amaka into her office. She spoke with the smile of someone holding a blade. "You're charming, Amaka. I'll give you that. But let me be blunt. You don't belong here. Not in this company. Not in his life." Amaka kept her voice steady. "Is that your opinion, or Chike's?" Adiz's smile widened. "Soon enough, it will be his too. Men like him get bored. And when they do, they throw away the toys they've played with." The words echoed in her mind all evening, threatening to plant seeds of doubt.